I never thought my quiet suburban neighborhood would turn into a nightmare. I always followed the rules, paid the HOA dues on time, and smiled at the neighbors, even when I didn't feel like it. But nothing could have prepared me for the day. Karen crossed a line no one should ever cross. My son, Jake, is only 10. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was 6. Since then, our lives have revolved around managing his condition, checking his blood sugar, watching his diet, and most importantly, making sure he always has his insulin. We kept a small fridge on our front porch, tucked behind a privacy screen, to store emergency insulin. That way, if Jake had an episode while playing outside, we didn't have to rush all the way inside. Karen, the self-proclaimed enforcer of the HOA, hated it. She complained about that fridge during every monthly HOA meeting, said it ruined the aesthetic of the neighborhood. I told her it was a medical necessity, but she didn't care. She said rules were rules. Last Monday, I came home from work to find the small fridge missing. I panicked. Jake had just come in from playing with his friends and was starting to feel dizzy. When I asked him to get his insulin dose, he said the fridge was gone. Gone. I ran outside and found the spot empty. No note, no explanation. Just gone. My wife called Karen immediately. Her tone was cold and smug. I removed that eyesore. "You're welcome," she said. I dropped it off at the dump. The dump. That fridge had Jake's insulin inside. Insulin that must be kept cold. Insulin that cost hundreds of dollars. Insulin that, without warning, could mean life or death. We had a backup inside. But the very idea that someone would throw away life-saving medication because it looked bad had me shaking with rage. Jake was pale and sweating, barely responsive. We got him stabilized, thank God. But something snapped in me that day. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not this time. Karen thought she was above the law, that she could bully people and call it community upkeep. But this was more than a broken fence or a weed complaint. This was attempted murder. The night after Karen dumped my son's insulin, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined what could have happened. What if we hadn't had backup insulin? What if we were out for groceries or stuck in traffic? Jake could have gone into diabetic shock, or worse. The next morning, I gathered everything. Receipts for the insulin, a photo of the fridge setup, HOA meeting minutes where I had explained Jake's condition, and even a recording of our phone call with Karen. Her voice, smug and unapologetic, clearly admitting she tossed the thing herself because it was clutter. That recording was gold. I called the police. The officer who arrived, Officer Langston, was calm but serious. I told him everything. He asked a lot of questions about Jake's diagnosis, the value of the insulin, the HOA policies, and Karen's history with us. When I played the recording, his jaw tightened. "Do you have the medical documentation and proof the fridge was being used for insulin?" he asked. "Everything's right here," I said, handing him Jake's medical records and a copy of the fridge's prescription use authorization from our doctor. That's when his tone changed. "You may not realize this, sir, but this goes beyond a neighborhood dispute. If what you're saying is true, this could fall under reckless endangerment, maybe even attempted manslaughter." I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and dread. Karen wasn't just a neighborhood nuisance anymore. She was in serious legal trouble. Officer Langston went to her house right after leaving hours. I watched from the front window as he knocked on her door. She opened it, arms crossed, already scowling. They talked for about 10 minutes. Then he handed her a paper, a subpoena. Apparently, she didn't take it well. She screamed loud enough that most of the block heard her. "Are you seriously arresting me over a stupid cooler? I'm on the HOA board. I run this community." But the officer stood firm. "No, ma'am. You endangered a child's life, and there are consequences for that." Karen was furious. She slammed the door, shouted about getting her lawyer, and yelled something about slander and overreaction. But the wheels were already turning. The report was filed. The case was opened. And the best part? Several neighbors came by that evening to quietly thank me for speaking up. Apparently, Karen had pulled stunts before, just never this bad. This time, she messed with the wrong family. The next few days were a whirlwind. Word spread fast through our neighborhood. At first, there were whispers, people asking each other if it was true. Had Karen really thrown away a diabetic kid's insulin? Was she actually being investigated for attempted murder? Then, the whispers turned into outrage. It wasn't long before the HOA board called an emergency meeting. Karen, of course, showed up in full force. shoulders squared, lips tight, and eyes daring anyone to challenge her. But the smug confidence she normally carried? Gone. Replaced with panic. I was invited to speak first. I stood up, holding the printed transcript of our call. I didn't even have to read it aloud. Everyone had already heard it. Copies had made their way to nearly every resident. Some even had the audio saved on their phones. Karen had made herself famous for all the wrong reasons. She knowingly discarded medication that could have cost my son his life, I said. All because she didn't like how a medical fridge looked on my porch. One that was hidden and approved. There were gasps. A few heads shook in disbelief. Then Karen stood. He's lying. That fridge was never approved. He made it up. It's not even legal to keep medication outdoors. Actually, one of the other board members interrupted. We have the approval paperwork from 2 years ago. You were at that meeting. You voted yes. It's in the minutes. Karen froze. Another neighbor, Ms. Alvarez, chimed in. You told my son to throw away his skateboard because it was too colorful. You reported me for having sunflowers on my porch. You threatened to fine the Jacksons because their cat walked outside. And now this. It was like a dam had burst. One by one, people began speaking up. Complaints, stories, frustrations, all aimed at Karen. People she'd bullied, fined, embarrassed, and harassed for years finally had a reason to rise up. The board took a vote that night. A unanimous decision. Karen was officially removed from her position as HOA president. She stood there, speechless, as the gavel hit the table. But that wasn't the end. The next day, detectives arrived with a warrant. They searched her property for evidence of negligence and destruction of medical property. She was taken in for questioning. The charges were formal now. Reckless, endangerment of a minor and criminal, destruction of essential medical supplies. The prosecutor was even reviewing it under attempted murder by willful negligence. Karen's arrogance had finally caught up to her. And the neighborhood? For the first time in years, it felt like a real community again. 3 months later, Karen stood trial in the county courthouse. By now, the story had made local headlines. HOA president endangers diabetic child, one article read. Another, neighborhood tyrant faces attempted murder charges. The media loved the drama, and Karen hated every second of it. I showed up to every court date, not out of revenge, but because I needed to see justice through. My wife sat beside me, holding my hand. Jake stayed home with his grandma. He didn't need to see this mess. Karen, for her part, looked like a shadow of the woman we once knew. Her trademark, sharp suits and tight ponytail, were replaced with plain blouses and slumped shoulders. The confidence was gone, but not the denial. Her lawyer argued that she didn't know insulin was in the fridge, that she thought it was just drinks or unnecessary junk, that she was only doing her job, maintaining order in the community. But the evidence told a different story. We played the call recording again in court. I removed that eyesore. You're welcome, Karen's voice echoed in the courtroom. I dropped it off at the dump. The prosecutor, a sharp young woman named Ms. Calloway, turned to the jury. She admits it. She knew what she was doing. She knew the fridge was tied to a child's health. She just didn't care. That's not a mistake. That's malice. Karen didn't say a word during the trial, not even when neighbor after neighbor took the stand against her, each one recounting stories of threats, fines, and petty harassment. People she'd embarrassed. People she'd pushed too far. Then came my turn to testify. I looked at the jury and said, I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for accountability. My son could have died. Karen didn't just break a rule. She broke trust, decency, and the law. It took the jury 6 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty. Karen was found guilty of reckless endangerment and destruction of medical property. The judge stopped short of attempted murder, but she still faced serious consequences: a suspended prison sentence, heavy fines, mandatory community service, and a permanent restraining order from my family. She tried to apologize during sentencing, but it was too little, too late. The judge didn't buy her crocodile tears. Neither did I. Back home, the community began healing. The HOA restructured its rules to protect families with medical needs. A new board was formed, one that cared about people, not power. And as for Jake, he's doing fine. He still plays outside, still needs his insulin, and now has a reinforced medical box the HOA actually helped us install. Karen is gone, but the lesson she left behind? That will stay with us forever. If you think HOA Karens like this should be held accountable, Hit that subscribe button right now. I've got more unbelievable real-life stories. Where justice finally catches up, don't miss the next one. And hey, give this video a like if you believe messing with a child's health is never okay. And drop a comment below. What would you have done if this happened to your kid?